I'd been waiting 7 years for a phone call that never came. 7 years of birthday cards returned to center. 7 years of gifts sent into silence. 7 years of standing at my children's doors while they pretended I didn't exist. Then, one day, an invitation finally arrived, my daughter's 45th birthday party. I thought it was reconciliation. I was wrong. At that party, they called me onto a stage in front of 50 strangers and said something that made me walk out immediately and disappear without a trace. I'm grateful you're here with me. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from and what's your local time? My story begins on a Wednesday morning in my small Buffalo apartment. I reached for my phone before I even opened my eyes. Old habit. The screen lit up the dim bedroom. 6:47 a.m. No missed calls. No messages. Same as yesterday. Same as every day for the past 7 years. I pushed myself up, feeling the familiar ache in my lower back. 42 years at the Bethlehem steel plant will do that to a man. The factory's been closed for more than a decade, but my body still follows the old schedule. Up before 7, even though I have nowhere to be. The apartment was quiet. It's always quiet. 1-bedroom kitchenette, a bathroom with a shower that drips. No matter how many times I try to fix it. Rent is $650 a month, a heavy bite out of my Social Security check, but it's mine. Clem paid on time. I made coffee in the old Mr. Coffee machine, the one Marilyn and I got as a wedding gift 46 years ago. Still works. They don't make things like they used to. While it brewed, I looked out the window over Prospect Avenue. Wednesday morning in October, leaves turning brown and gold, people heading to work or the bus stop, life moving forward like it always does. My living room walls are covered with photographs, all old. An inner pink dress at elementary school graduation. That smile that used to light up my world. Alan in his Little League uniform holding the bat I taught him to swing. A family photo at Lake George, must be 25 years old now. We rented a cabin for a week. Couldn't afford much, but we had each other, or so I believed. I poured coffee into a chipped mug, black, stood there looking at those faces frozen in time. My children, adults now, with children of their own grandchildren I've never held or met. How did I become invisible to them? The coffee tasted bitter. Maybe that was me. Around 9. I went for my morning walk down Prospect Lepton South Park through the neighborhood to Casanova Park. 40 minutes there, 40 back. Keeps my legs working. Gives me something to do. The park was busy for a Wednesday. Mostly older folks. I saw George Martinez on his usual bench, waving at his grandson on the playground. The boy, maybe 6, ran over every few minutes to show him a leaf, a stick, anything. George looked at each treasure like it was gold. I kept walking. I passed Eleanor pushing a stroller, her daughter beside her. 3 generations laughing together. The baby reached up and Eleanor kissed those tiny hands. I looked away. Maren used to talk about grandkids. In those last weeks, when the pneumonia was winning, she'd paint pictures with words. When Anne has babies, you'll teach them to fish. When Alan's kids come, you'll show them how to change a tire fixer faucet. You'll be such a good grandpa, Grant. Her thin hand in mine, her whisper soft. Promise me you'll take care of our babies no matter what. I promise, I'd said, and I meant it. I tried to keep that promise, but the babies grew up and decided they didn't need me. The walk back felt longer. My back throbbed as I climbed the stairs. I heated leftover soup for lunch, made a big pot. Sunday, eat it all week. Then I sorted the mail, bills, flyers, junk, and then I saw it. An envelope, thick ivory cardstock. My name written in elegant script. Postmark, Greenwich, Connecticut, and lived in Greenwich. I opened it. My hands weren't quite steady as I slid my finger under the flap. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind you ordered special, not something from a drugstore. I pulled out the card inside, cream-colored embossed gold lettering, formal, elegant, everything Anne had become. You are cordially invited to celebrate Anne Patain's 45th birthday, Saturday, October 14th. 6 o'clock in the evening, formal attire. An address in Greenwich, Connecticut followed. No personal note. No hope you can make it, Dad. Just the printed text, precise and impersonal. But after 7 years of silence, it was something. I sat on the couch, still holding the card. Something stirred in my chest. Not hope. Hope had been buried long ago, more like a question. Why now? Unbidden, the memories came, the gifts I'd sent to avoid. The cashmere scarf I bought for an ex 3 Christmases ago. Soft grey, her old favorite color. $180, almost a week of groceries. I packaged it carefully. Wrote, "Thinking of you. Love, Dad." Never heard a word. The Italian leather briefcase for Alan bought at an estate sale with money I'd been saving for a new water heater. A birthday note about how a good lawyer needed a good briefcase. No response. The sterling silver frame engraved with Anne's initials. The Trek bicycle for Connor, my grandson 8 now, whom I'd never met. $450 for a bike I hoped he'd love. Did he even know it came from me? Books for Alan. A crystal vase for Anne. Pens engraved with Alan's name. Years of gifts, hundreds of dollars. I didn't have spent on people who never acknowledged receiving anything. My voicemail box held years of my own voice sounding smaller each time. And it's Dad. Just wanted to hear your voice. Call me when you can. Alan, it's your father. Hope work's going well. Give me a call. No one ever did. 15 years ago, Alan got married. I found out 3 months later when my cousin Agnes saw me at the grocery store. Wasn't that wedding beautiful? She'd said until she realized I hadn't been invited, hadn't even known. The pity on her face stayed with me like a scar. 14 years ago, Anne had her first child. I learned about it for months after the birth from a neighbor who assumed I already knew. "Congratulations," she'd said lightly. The words hit me like a blow. I called her immediately. She answered, sounding annoyed. "Oh yeah, we've been busy, Dad. I was going to tell you." But she hadn't. And she wouldn't have if the neighbor hadn't mentioned it. 7 years of that followed doors, literally and figuratively closed messages, ignored silence, swallowing everything. 7 years of feeling like I was shouting into emptiness. I looked down at the invitation in my rough hands. Smooth paper, elegant script. Everything about it belonged to a world my children had built without me. Why now? The question tightened. In my stomach. People don't reach out after 7 years without a reason. Maybe they wanted to reconnect. Maybe and now a parent finally understood. Maybe I stopped myself. That path only led to disappointment. But I also knew I couldn't pretend this envelope hadn't come. Couldn't return to my routine of coffee walks and junk mail. If there was even the smallest chance my daughter wanted me back in her life, I had to try, even if it hurt. Right there on my worn couch overlooking Prospect Avenue, I decided I would go. Not with hope, but with determination. A colder, steadier, determination to understand why, after all these empty years, an invitation had arrived. An elegant gold script. Whatever the reason I needed to know, for the next 3 days, I prepared, not with excitement, but with a careful resolve, of a man walking into something he doesn't understand, and might not survive intact. The first thing I needed was a suit. I hadn't bought one in over a decade, not since my retirement party at the steel plant when they'd handed me a plaque and a handshake after 42 years. That suit still hung in my closet, but it didn't fit right. Age shrinks you in some places and expands you in others. Thursday morning, I took the bus downtown to the Bon Ton on Main Street. The store was nearly empty. Department stores in Buffalo were fading like everything else. A young salesman approached, sizing me up. "Looking for something specific?" he asked. "Birthday party," I said. "My daughter's." He showed me options. I chose a gray suit, nothing flashy. In the dressing room, I studied myself in the mirror. The shoulders fit. That was enough. Had to register. I hesitated. $165, a quarter of my Social Security check money, meant for the furnace inspection before winter. The salesman waited for Anne, I told myself. For Al and for answers. I pulled out my debit card. Friday, I went searching for a gift. I walked past familiar storefronts until I stopped at a jewelry store near the theater district. The woman behind, the counter kinded and older, asked how she could help. "I need something for my daughter's birthday," I said. "Something nice." She showed me options. My eyes settled on a sterling silver serving set, the kind used at formal dinners. "They could engrave it." "AP," I said. "And Piton, she'll love it," the woman said. I hope she was right. $580. I thought of the savings account I'd opened after Marilyn died, adding to it whenever I had $20 to spare. My emergency fund for breakdowns, leaks, trouble. This was its own kind of emergency. I paid and arranged to pick it up Saturday morning. Walking home in the cold, I thought of Anne, not the woman in Greenwich, but the girl she'd been 7 years old, learning to ride her bike in our driveway. I'd run alongside her, holding the seat despite my aching back. "I've got you," I'd said. "I won't let go." Then I had let go and she'd flown laughing. "Daddy, I did it." "Daddy, when had that stopped?" I thought of Alan too. 16, struggling with a flat tire on his first car. I'd shown him how to use his weight, not his arms. A man needs to know this. I told him he'd listen, fixed it himself. Proud, practical love. That was what I'd given them. No big speeches, no theatrics. But I'd been there until suddenly I wasn't allowed to be. Saturday came faster than expected. I woke early, showered, shaved carefully around the usual nicks, trimmed the hair in my nose and ears. Small dignities. I picked up the gift, returned home, and dressed. The new suit felt stiff, like it belonged to someone else. I tied my tie 3 times before it looked right. Shined my shoes, the same black Oxfords I'd worn to Marilyn's funeral. Still good. Leather. Lasts. In the bathroom mirror, I saw a 69-year-old man, grey hair-lined, face, loose skin, but the eyes were still mine. I tried practicing the words, "Happy birthday, sweetheart." My voice sounded rusty, like I was rehearsing a part I'd never learned. When had speaking to my own daughter become something I had to practice? I gave up and called a cab. 20 minutes. I waited on the couch, the gift beside me. When the horn honked, I grabbed my jacket and took one last look at the apartment. The photos of Anne and Alan still smiling as children. I locked the door behind me. The taxi ride took 90 minutes. 90 minutes from my life in Buffalo to theirs in Greenwich, Connecticut. I'd never seen a house like this except in magazines. The taxi slowed onto a private drive lined with maples, their leaves just beginning to turn. Through the windshield, I saw it, a 3-story white colonial mansion with columns fit for a history book. Floodlights lit the facade against the evening sky. The lawn looked trimmed with scissors. The $1.52, the driver said. I counted out 3 20s, told him to keep the change. My hands were steady. Decades on factory floors had taught me how to keep them that way. The circular driveway was crowded with cars I recognized from commercials. Mercedes, BMW, a Tesla. Near the fountain, an actual marble fountain with water running in October, sat my daughter's silver Lexus. I walked up the stone steps, gift box under my arm, and pressed the doorbell. Chimes echoed inside. A man in a black suit and white gloves opened the door, polite but blank. "Good evening, sir. I'm Grant Sullivan," I said. "Anne Paten's father." Something flickered across his face, surprised, but he recovered. "Of course. Please come in." The entrance hall could have fit my entire apartment. Marble floors polished to a mirror. A crystal chandelier larger than my kitchen table hung overhead. To the left, a living room with furniture no one looked comfortable enough to sit on. Modern art shapes and colors covered the walls. To the right, a sweeping staircase with an iron railing. "The party is in the garden," the butler said. "This way." I followed him through a dining room with a table long enough for 20 people. The walls were painted in colors I couldn't name, something between beige and gray. Everything was spotless. Everything was expensive. Even the air smelled of fresh flowers and polish. We stepped through French doors onto a stone patio. The garden looked like something from a wedding magazine Marilyn used to flip through while waiting in grocery lines. White tents with open sides, round tables draped in cream linens, centerpieces of roses and hydrangeas that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. 50 or 60 guests stood in clusters beneath strings of Edison bulbs, holding champagne, flutes that caught the light. A jazz trio played softly under one tent. Real instruments, not recorded music. The guests wore clothes I'd only ever seen on TV. Women in sleek cocktail dresses, men in fitted suits that cost more than my rent. I glanced at my grey suit from Macy's. The fabric suddenly felt thin. 165 had seemed enough on Thursday. Servers drifted through the crowd with trays of hors d'oeuvres I didn't recognize. Shrimp pastries, things balanced on crackers. I stepped off the patio onto the grass. No one noticed me at first. They were busy laughing, clinking glasses, talking about places I'd only heard of. I caught pieces of conversations, weekends in the Hamptons, sons at Yale, boats at Martha's Vineyard, a language from a world where I didn't belong. Then I saw her. Anne stood near the center of the garden, surrounded by several women in expensive dresses. She was laughing, head tilted back, champagne in one hand, the other gesturing as she spoke. She wore a cream dress, silk maybe, and jewelry that flashed when she moved. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked like wealth itself. She looked nothing like the little girl who fell asleep on my shoulder after bedtime stories. I walked toward her, grass thick under my shoes, gift box tucked under my arm. 20 feet, 15, 10. She saw me when I was still 10 feet away. Her laughter stopped for a split second. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe discomfort. Then her face shifted into a smile. That smile never reached her eyes. Anne walked toward me with the practiced grace of someone who'd learned how to move in rooms like this. Shoulders back, chin lifted, champagne flute balanced perfectly. She leaned in for an air kiss, her cheek passing inches from mine. Her perfume probably cost more than my water bill. "Dad, you made it. I wasn't sure you'd come." Her voice was polished, distant, like she was greeting a client, not her father. "Of course," I said. "Wouldn't miss your birthday." The words hung there. She didn't respond. Didn't ask about the drive, or how I'd been. Her eyes were already drifting past me, scanning the crowd. 3 women in designer dresses approached their jewelry, catching the Edison bulb glow. They looked like they'd stepped straight out of a magazine, the same ones where houses like hers appeared. "Everyone," Anne said. "This is my father. Grant, not my dad. Not my father, who I haven't seen in 7 years. Just Grant, like a distant relative who didn't need explaining." The women smiled politely without warmth. "Nice to meet you." "Hello." No one asked where I lived or what I did. They already knew I didn't belong. It was written in my off-the-rack suit, my calloused hands, the way I stood, like I was still on a factory floor. "Oh, I should go mingle," Anne said, already turning away. "Help yourself to drinks and appetizers, Dad." Her circle closed around her the moment she stepped back in. I stood there 10 seconds, maybe 15, invisible. I walked on. I spotted Alan emerging from the house, navy suit, tailored so perfectly it looked sewn onto him. He stood among men, his age, all of them laughing at something he'd said. Scotch in one hand, easy confidence in every gesture. I stopped. He saw me. I know he did. We were 30 feet apart with nothing blocking the view. Our eyes met for a heartbeat. He looked away, kept talking, shifted his stance so his back faced me. Something twisted in my chest. Not pain, something sharper, like a slow turn of a knife. I kept walking and found an empty table near the edge of the garden, away from the laughter and music. I sat in a white folding chair. The gift box with the sterling silver serving set rested beside me. A server appeared. "Champagne, sir." "Sure." I took the flute just to have something to hold. Didn't drink it. Just watched the bubbles climb the glass. From where I sat, I saw the whole party. Clusters of people laughing, leaning close, touching each other's arms with easy affection. I saw a woman about my age, surrounded by 3 generations, a grandchild on her lap, 2 daughters leaning in. Everyone listening when she spoke. I'd never held my grandchildren. Connor was 8, Ava was 6, Zoe was 4. I knew those details from Facebook before Anne blocked me. I knew Connor played soccer. Ava loved horses. Zoe had just started preschool. They didn't know my name. I looked at the champagne crystal glass. Probably $50 a flute, starched linens, fresh roses arranged by someone trained to do it. Everything here cost money I'd never had. Except the one thing money couldn't buy. Sat right here alone at a corner table holding a gift no one would open. I set the champagne down. My jaw was clenched so tight it hurt. I loosened it, breathed. 42 years of factory work had taught me to swallow things down, to stay steady when overlooked. I could sit here, I could wait. A spoon tapped crystal. Conversations quieted. I looked up to see Jeffrey Patton stepping onto a small stage near the edge of the garden. The jazz band stopped playing. Conversations cut off mid-engine. Champagne. Glasses froze halfway to lips. Across the garden, 50 people turned toward the small stage where Jeffrey Patton stood at a microphone, his hand raised like a conductor calling for silence. He got it. Joffrey, about 50 grey at the temples, wore a charcoal suit that probably costs more than I used to make in a month at the plant. He had one of those faces people instinctively listen to. Solid jaw, perfect posture, effortless confidence. "Good evening, everyone," he said, voice smooth and amplified. "Thank you for joining us on this beautiful night." Polite applause. "We're here, of course, to celebrate my wonderful wife, Anne." He gestured and she stepped onto the stage, smiling, that flawless practice smile. They exchanged a brief public kiss. Anne is not just an incredible partner and mother. She's a pillar of this community, a woman of vision and grace. More applause. Anne waved modestly. Jeffrey continued, but tonight isn't only about celebration. It's about family, about legacy. Something tightened in my gut. Instinct, pure, sharp, like knowing the machine was about to fail before it made a sound. Many of you know, Anne and I have been working on a special project. Alan emerged from the crowd and joined them on stage, positioning himself beside his sister and brother-in-law. The three stood shoulder to shoulder, a united front. His tailored navy suit caught the light immaculate. "We've acquired a stunning piece of coastal property," Jeffsy said. "Ocean views, prime location, the kind of place people dream about." Approving murmurs, nods, soft comments of admiration. "We're building a beach house," he continued. "Not just a getaway, a family compound, a place for the Piton and Sullivan families to gather for generations." Alan took the microphone. "As the family attorney, I've handled the legal work. This is more than real estate. It's an investment in our family's future, a legacy to pass down." I sat alone at my corner table, the untouched champagne warm in the glass. A legacy, generations, our family. I hadn't been invited to Thanksgiving in 7 years. Anne reclaimed the microphone. "We wanted to share this moment with you because family means everything to us." The irony stung. Family means everything. And yet, I'd sent birthday cards, never answered Christmas gifts, never acknowledged messages, never returned. Doors closed in my face, voicemail after voicemail. "But family means everything." And Dad said suddenly, her gaze locking onto mine, "Why don't you come up here with us?" Every head turned. It hit me like a physical weight. 50 pairs of eyes waiting, watching. Stage lights brightened, heat rising. Jeffrey and Alan stood at the edge of the platform, both staring directly at me. Anne smiled, her hand extended. Something was happening, something planned. And the old instinct in my gut, the one that had kept me alive in factories full of dangerous machinery, was screaming. "Come on, Dade," Anne said, her voice amplified across the garden. "Don't be shy." I didn't know how long I sat there. A few seconds, maybe. It felt like hours. My legs barely responded when I pushed myself up from the chair. A gift box with the sterling silver Flattier stayed behind, suddenly meaningless. Crossing the lawn felt slow, every step visible. Dozens of eyes followed me. The perfectly manicured grass seemed uneven under my shoes. 3 wooden steps led to the stage. They creaked under my weight. Anne's hand went around my shoulders the moment I reached the top. The first physical contact in years. It felt practiced, her fingers barely touching my suit. "Everyone, my father," she said into the microphone. "After far too long, he's finally here with us tonight." Polite applause, puzzled faces. Why does this matter? Jeffrey stepped in smoothly. "Now, as I mentioned, this beach house project is something we're tremendously excited about. Total value of the property and construction $3.5 million. Impress murmurs, a low whistle. And for a project of this magnitude, he continued, something that benefits the entire family. It should be a shared investment. My stomach dropped. Alan stepped forward. "Dad, we know you sold the house you and Mum bought on Prospect Avenue. How did he know that I had told no one? We know that after you bought your apartment, you still had savings left." My heart pounded. They had investigated my finances without asking. Bank records, tax returns. How far had they gone? Anne's voice soft. "We thought it would be wonderful if you contributed to this family investment. That way, you'd have a stake in the beach house. 2. Visit whenever you wanted. Spend time with Connor and Ava and Zoe. Be part of their lives." There it was, the bait. Access to my grandchildren. Alan pulled a folder from his suit. Thick, official, pre-arranged. "I prepared the paperwork myself. All we need is your signature and authorization for the bank transfer." He opened it. "Documents tabbed was signed here." Jeffrey added, "We're looking at a contribution of $350,000. That's roughly what you have available, isn't it?" The exact amount. They knew everything. With Anne's arm around me, the microphone amplifying every breath, the truth clicked into place. They dug through my finances without permission. Planned this ambush. Invited me after 7 years for one reason. Money. 7 years of birthday cards I'd chosen carefully. 7 years of Christmas gifts wrapped with arthritic hands. 7 years of calls that went unanswered. 7 years of hoping they might remember I existed. And they had remembered now that they wanted $350,000. I looked at N, smiling for the crowd with her hand on my shoulder like we were close. I looked at Alan holding documents he'd prepared weeks in advance. I looked at Jeffrey, polished and expectant, and something inside me changed, not broke. I'd been breaking for 7 years. This was different. Something snapping free like a rope suddenly going slack. Clarity washed over me, cold, precise. For years I'd asked what I'd done wrong, how I'd failed as a father so badly my children cut me out, but I hadn't failed. They had the babies Marilyn had whispered about on her deathbed, had grown into adults who could stand on a stage and try to extract money from their elderly father, using his grandchildren as leverage. Anne's fingers on my shoulder felt like nothing. "Just wait, Dad," she said, still smiling. "What do you think?" The microphone hovered. Alan held out a pen. 50 strangers waited. I looked at both my children, at the documents, at the crowd, and I said one word: no. The silence that followed was absolute. 50 people frozen. Not a champagne glass clinketed. Not a whisper. They hadn't expected refusal. Anne recovered first, forcing a laugh. "Dad, I don't think you understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. My voice came out calmer than I expected. "I need to think about it. Not angry, just final." Anne's face tightened. The hostess' smile cracked at the edges. "But Dad, there's not much to think about. The property closes next week. We need to move quickly. Pressure tactics create urgency. Make me feel like I was losing an opportunity instead of protecting myself." Alan stepped closer, extending the pen. "If you sign now, I can process the transfer first thing Monday morning. Clean and simple." Jeffrey added, his smile strained. "Now, Grant, this is an incredible opportunity, an investment in your family's future, and of course, you'd have full access to the property. You'd be welcome any time." Empty promises from a man who'd watched his wife exclude me for 7 years. I looked at each of them. Anne, with her hand still hovering near my shoulder. Alan holding documents and a pen like a salesman. Jeffrey standing behind them like a shield. "No," I said again, quieter this time, more certain. I stepped out from under Anne's touch, backed away from the microphone, turned toward the stage steps. "Dad, wait," Alan's voice behind me. I walked down the 3 wooden steps, started across the lawn toward the house. My legs felt steady now, stronger than they had all evening. Footsteps rushed behind me. Alan caught up his hand, closing around my arm. "You can't just walk away like this." His voice low, hissed quiet enough the guests wouldn't hear. I stopped, looked down at his hand on my arm. "Let go of me." He didn't. "Do you understand what you're throwing away? This is your chance to be part of this family again. If you walk away now, don't expect another invitation. Don't expect to be included in family vacations or holidays. Don't expect access to the beach, house." There it was, the threat laid bare. "Do what we want, or stay erased." I looked up from his hand to his face. My son, 42 years old, a corporate attorney who made more in a month than I'd made in a year, wearing a $2,000 suit and threatening his elderly father with continued estrangement. "If I didn't hand over my life savings, I don't expect anything." "From you," I said. "I haven't expected anything for 7 years, and you know what? I finally understand why." Alan's grip loosened slightly. I kept my voice steady, level. "You didn't forget me. You weren't too busy. You made a choice. You chose to erase me from your lives, and I chose to keep begging like a fool. But that ends tonight." I pulled my arm free, turned, walked away, didn't look back. Through the French doors, across the marble foyer with its crystal chandelier, out the front door that the butler had opened. 90 minutes ago when I'd arrived, believing this might be reconciliation, I stood on the circular driveway and pulled out my phone, called the same taxi company, gave them the address. 15 minutes, the dispatcher said. I waited in the darkness outside the floodlit mansion. Behind me, through the windows, I could see the garden party continuing. The jazz band had started playing again. People were talking, drinking, moving on. Within 10 minutes, they'd forget the awkward moment when the father refused to fund his children's beach house. But I wouldn't forget. The taxi's headlights swept up the driveway. Same driver as before, different expression when he saw my face. "Back to Buffalo?" he asked. Yes, I climbed into the back seat, pulled the door closed. The car rolled down the long driveway, lined with maples, past the fountain onto the street, where the houses cost millions, and the people inside never had to choose between medication and groceries. In the taxi heading back to Buffalo, I watched the lights of Greenwich disappear behind me, and for the first time in 7 years, I felt something other than pain. I felt clarity. The taxi driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Rough night. You could say that. He didn't push. He just turned the radio down and let me sit with whatever was written on my face. I watched the highway blur past streetlights, melting into orange streaks as the city gave way to suburbs, and then the industrial corridor leading back to Buffalo, back to reality. My mind wouldn't stop. They'd investigated my finances. How, when? Had they hired someone called the bank, pretending to be me? Or had Alan, with his legal connections, found a loophole to access my records? They'd planned the ambush, not a private conversation, but a public stage. 50 witnesses. Pressure designed to make refusal look like parental failure. They hadn't wanted me for 7 years. They wanted my money now. Marilyn's face surfaced in my mind, not the gaunt, fading version near the end. With a strong, laughing woman who stood beside me for 26 years, her hand in mine in the hospital. Her whisper, "Take care of our babies." I tried, Marilyn, I said aloud in the taxi. God knows I tried. But they don't want care. They want to take. And for the first time in 7 years, I felt anger instead of grief. Not hot anger, cold. The kind that sharpens thought. We reached Buffalo just after midnight, and paid the driver and gave a 20% tip. Work and gas courtesy. He'd earned it by keeping quiet. I climbed the stairs to my apartment. My back complained. 42 years of lifting steel never truly leaves you. I unlocked the door and switched on the lights. The photos stared back Anne and Alan as children frozen in a world where they still loved me. Little League, birthday cakes, Lake George trips, faces that no longer matched the adults they'd become. I removed my grey suit jacket and hung it in the closet. Still new, only worn once. For what purpose? Another humiliation. I sat at my kitchen table, the one where I'd eaten alone for 7 years. Written birthday cards no one acknowledged. Wrapped gifts that disappeared into silence. I wasn't sad. I wasn't crying. Something else was forming. Something harder. I kept my promise to you, Marilyn, I said to the empty room. But I can't keep sacrificing myself for people who see me. As an ATM, I pulled out my notebook, the one where I tracked pension payments and grocery lists. I opened to a clean page, wrote at the top plan, and began listing legal name change, sell apartment, close bank accounts, open new accounts at different bank, cancel phone number, delete Facebook, move far away, contact lawyer, about will remove, Anne and Alan. The list grew detailed, methodical. This was what I knew. Plan, execute, solve problems. Factory floor logic. Identify the problem, build the solution. The problem was that my children still had access to me, could find me, could demand things. After 7 years of silence, the solution was to become unfindable. I stayed up all night. The list expanded into multiple pages. Every step considered, every complication addressed. By dawn, I had a roadmap. Legal name change, first time consuming, but essential. While it processed research, new cities somewhere distant, somewhere they'd never think to look. Maybe coastal. I'd never live by the ocean. Open new bank accounts, under the new name. Transfer funds, close old accounts, no paper trail. Sell the apartment through an LLC so my name wouldn't appear publicly. Contact a lawyer. Monday morning, not only for the will, but to document the coercion attempt. Maybe even explore protective options. I looked at the filled pages and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Papa's Monday morning. I was waiting. Outside Jeffrey Pierce's office when he arrived at 8 a.m., the lawyer looked up from his coffee when I'd walked in. Jeffrey Pierce's office was modern, organized glass desk, leather chairs, law degrees framed on the wall. He gestured to a seat. "Mr. Sullivan, you sounded urgent on the phone." I sat down. "I want to change my name and disappear." He set his coffee down carefully, studied me, grey beard, sharp eyes, the kind of lawyer who'd seen everything. "That's pretty drastic, Mr. Sullivan. You sure about this?" "I haven't existed to them for 7 years," I said. "Time they stopped existing, to me." He nodded once. "Then, let's make it legal. Cut to paperwork spread across the glass desk. Petition for name change. Grant Sullivan, Nathan Grant Sullivan. Keep the middle name. Keep the surname. Just change the first. Why Nathan? No reason, just not Grant anymore. Cut to will amendment. Remove Ann and Alan entirely. New beneficiary charity for abandoned elderly. Jeffrey's pen scratching signatures. Court approval takes 3 months. I nodded. I'll wait. Cut to first. National Bank Main Street. Miss Janet Crawford, bank manager, 40 professional. I need to close all my accounts. She frowned. Is there a problem with our service? It's personal. Check-in savings CD, total $380 in cashier's checks. A lifetime in 3 pieces of paper. Cut to different bank across town. Second, Federal. Open new accounts. Deposit everything. I need no public information tied to these accounts. Cliff nodded. Didn't ask why. Cut to real estate agent's office. This apartment for sale. $15,000. Market slow. Could take months. I'll take less. I need quick. 3 days later. Offer at $15,000. Accepted immediately. Cut to laptop. At home late nights searching city's west coast northwest somewhere. They'd never think to look. Found at condo in Port Towns in Washington. 2,800 miles away. Pacific Northwest Ocean views. $195,000 and could buy outright with cash. Virtual tours small. Perfect anonymous. Made offer online accepted within hours. Cut to phone store cancel number. I'd had 15 years by prepaid. Paid no contract. No records. Took old SIM card home. Kitchen scissors. Cut it into pieces. Cut to computer. Delete Facebook. Only social media. I had years of posts. Nobody liked messages. Nobody answered. Gone with one click. Cliff's email address. Open new generic one. Nung Sully, 195th Mail. Come. Nothing personal. Nothing traceable. Cut to. Old phone rang. Last time, before disconnection. Alan's name on screen. I answered. Said nothing. Dad, listen. Maybe we came on a little strong. How about 280 instead of 350? That's a hell of a deal. Still trying to negotiate. Still thought this was about money. I don't care, Alan, I said. Voice flat. Don't care about the house. Don't care about the deal. Don't care about any of this. Dad, don't call me again. Hung up. Picked up the scissors. Cut the SIM card. Watched the pieces fall into the trash like confetti. Cut to 3 months later. Standing in front of Judge Martin Silverstein, Erie County Courthouse. Wood-paneled courtroom mostly empty. Judge reviewed paperwork. Looked over his reading glasses at me. Mr. Sullivan, you understand this is permanent? Yes, Your Honor. He signed, filed the document. Grant Sullivan ceased to exist. Nathan Grant Sullivan was born. Port Townsend was nothing like Buffalo. My condo was on the 3rd floor of a converted Victorian building with hardwood floors. That creaked when you walked in crown molding that had been there since 1892. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, a balcony that looked out over Puget Sound. On clear mornings, I could see the Olympic Mountains across the water, their peaks white with snow. Even in summer, I woke to the sound of seagulls instead of traffic. Made coffee and stood on the balcony instead of at a kitchen window overlooking a parking lot. Watched sailboats instead of delivery trucks. The town itself felt like it belonged in a postcard. Victorian seaport art galleries on every corner. Coffee shops with names like the Backwater and Better Living Through Coffee. A bookstore that smelled like old paper and sea air. The main street ran along the waterfront lined with shops that sold handmade pottery and antique maps and wooden boats carved by locals. The people were different too. Retirees, artists, former Navy from the base up north, fishermen who'd lived here their whole lives. Nobody asked where you came from or why. That was the unspoken rule of Port Towns, and everyone had a story, and you only shared it if you wanted to. I was Nathan now, not Grant pretending to be Nathan, just Nathan. Nathan Grant Sullivan, who lived in Unit 3C and took his coffee black and walked the beach every morning at 7. The second week, the man from the floor below knocked on my door. Saw you moved in, he said. Grey beard, weathered face, faded navy anchor tattooed on his forearm. Thought I should say hello. I'm Curtis Shaw. You drink coffee. His place was laid out like mine. Same floor plan, different furniture. Photos on the walls of aircraft carriers and young men in uniform. We sat at his kitchen table, and he poured coffee from a percolator that looked older than both of us. 30 years Navy, he said. Retired here 10 years ago after my wife passed. He didn't ask my story, just offered friendship, plain and simple. We started having coffee twice a week, sometimes 3 times. He mentioned his daughter once. Haven't talked to her in years. That's her choice. And I recognized the same quiet pain I'd carried. But Curtis didn't dwell on it. He didn't send gifts, or make phone calls, or hope things would change. He'd simply moved on. I found a rhythm. Morning walks on the beach collecting smooth stones and watching the tide pull in and out. Coffee with Curtis, talking about nothing important. The weather, the mariners, the new restaurant that opened downtown. Reading books I'd never had time for when I was working. Volunteering twice a week at the community center. Fixing broken chairs and squeaky doors and cabinets that wouldn't close. Right. Turned out 42 years in a factory left you with skills people needed. The folks in town were kind without being intrusive. Morning, Nathan. How you doing, Nathan? See, you got that cabinet working, Nathan. Appreciate it. The name felt right now. Natural. Like I'd been Nathan my whole life. And Grant Sullivan was someone I'd read about in a book. 6 months passed like that. Quiet. Peaceful. Guy'dn't miss Buffalo. Guy'dn't miss the cold or the grey skies, or the apartment where I'd spent 7 years being invisible. Guy'dn't miss being Grant. Then my phone rang. The prepaid cell I'd bought. In Buffalo, the one only Curtis and Jeffrey Pierce had the number 4. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. Buffalo area code. My stomach tightened. I stood on the balcony holding the phone, watching it vibrate in my hand. Let it ring twice. 3 times. 4. On the 5th ring, I answered. Nathan Grant Sullivan, a man's voice asked. Who's calling? My name is Andrew Clean. I'm an attorney representing Alan Sullivan. We've been trying to locate you. I should have hung up immediately, but I didn't. I stood on my balcony with the phone pressed to my ear, watching a ferry cut across the Sound toward the San Juan Islands, while a stranger fed me lies. Mr. Sullivan, Andrew Klein said, smooth and professional. A voice trained to make bad news sound reasonable. I apologize for the intrusion. I know this is unexpected. How did you get this number? Your previous attorney, Mr. Pierce, provided it. We had a court order. I didn't know if that was true. Didn't know if Jeffrey would have given them my number, even with the court order. But Cliff continued, I'm calling about an urgent family matter. We've discovered a bank account belonging to your late wife, Marilyn. My jaw tightened. Marilyn had been dead 23 years. The account was never closed. With accumulated interest, it now contains roughly $280,000, the exact amount they'd lowered their beach house demand to. As a widower, you're entitled to the funds. We just need you to return to Buffalo to sign paperwork. A blatant lie. Marilyn didn't have any secret accounts, I said, my voice steady. This is fabricated. I assure you, I don't care about this account, real or not. Don't contact me again. I hung up and blocked the number. My hands shook, not from fear, from anger. They'd hired someone to find me, tracked me across the country, created a fake story to lure me back, where they could pressure me again. Surrounded by lawyers and documents, and the same public shame tactic from the garden party. I gripped my phone, watching the ferry disappear, feeling that cold anger return, the sense of being hunted. A week passed, then a certified letter appeared in my mailbox. Return address, Erie County Courthouse, Buffalo. I opened it in the mailroom, already knowing. Summons, Alan Sullivan v. Nathan Grant. Sullivan, formerly Grant Sullivan. They were suing me. I read through the heretofores and where is until I found the claims. Defendant emotionally abandoned his children and grandchildren despite repeated attempts at reconciliation. Defendant made verbal promises to contribute to a family investment property. Defendant's sudden disappearance caused emotional distress to minor grandchildren eager to build a relationship. They wanted damages and enforcement of an oral contract. Absurd. I'd been excluded for 7 years. The grandchildren didn't know my name. I'd made no promises. I'd said no in front of 50 witnesses. But the summons was real. A court seal, a case number, a date, 6 weeks away. They weren't trying to win. They were trying to make my life so difficult that paying them off seemed easier. I walked back to my condo and called Jeffrey Pierce. He answered on the 2nd ring. Nathan, I was expecting your call. You gave them my number. No, I told them I had no current contact for you. They found you another way. His voice was calm, I assume you were served this morning. What are the claims? I read them. Emotional abandonment, oral contract, distress to grandchildren. Jeffrey went quiet. Then it's frivolous. Any judge will see that, but that doesn't mean it isn't dangerous. What do you mean? They're counting on you not appearing. If you don't show, they get a default judgment. Then they can pursue your assets, freeze accounts, make your life miserable. He paused. This is harassment, Nathan. Legal harassment, but it's effective. I looked out at the sound at the peaceful town. I'd found the life I'd built in 6 months. What do I do? Jeffrey's voice stayed steady. They have no case, Nathan, but you can't ignore it. Summons. We'll have to go back to Buffalo and fight this. Erie County Courthouse looked exactly as it had 3 months earlier when I'd filed my name change petition. Same stone steps, same brass doors, same marble hallway that echoed every footstep. Only the reason for being there had changed. Jeffrey and I arrived 30 minutes early. I wore the grey suit from the party, the only suit I owned. It still fit, though it felt heavier now, burdened with everything that had happened since the night I'd last worn it. Alan and Anne were already seated at the plaintiff's table with Andrew Clean. Jeffrey sat behind them. Moral support or financial oversight, I couldn't tell. They all looked up when I walked in. Surprise flashed across Anne's face as if she hadn't expected me to actually appear. Judge Martin Silverstein entered at 9, sharp. 60, gay beard, the no-nonsense look of someone who'd seen every trick twice. He stood. He reviewed the paperwork, frowning. This is a petition filed by Mr. Alan Sullivan against his father Nathan Sullivan, formerly Grant Sullivan, for abandonment and breach of oral contract. Klein rose. Your Honor, my clients have suffered tremendously from their father's actions. He outlined the narrative. He disappeared without warning, cut ties, made verbal promises, left grandchildren longing for a relationship. Waiter, the judge interrupted. You said him. Klein blinked, flustered. Him, Your Honor. My apologies. The judge noticed a small crack in his professional armor. Call your first witness, the judge said. Klein called Anne. She walked to the stand, in a navy suit, immaculate as always, took the oath. Miss Patanclean began to describe your relationship with your father. Anne's voice was soft, sad. It's been difficult, Your Honor. Dad was demanding. After Mum died, he became needy, always wanting attention. My hands tightened on the armrest. We tried to maintain contact, she continued, but it was draining. At my birthday party, we offered him a chance to join a family. Investment. He stormed out, disappeared, changed his name. We didn't know if he was alive. She dabbed tears. Klein handed her a tissue. And your children? They ask about Grandpa all the time. They don't understand why he abandoned. Jeffrey stood. Objection. Mischaracterization. Sustained, the judge said. No further questions, Klein said. Jeffrey rose for cross-examination, calm and precise. Ms. Peton, when was the last time you called your father before that party? And hesitated. I don't recall exactly. Jeffrey opened a folder. These are Mr. Sullivan's phone records from the past 5 years. There's 0 incoming calls from you or your brother. He handed copies to the judge. So, you were too busy to make a single call. In 5 years. Anne's cheeks reened. I was very busy with them, sure. Jeffrey said he produced more papers. These are screenshots of text messages your father sent you over 7 years. Birthday wishes, holiday greetings, dozens asking about your family. Hundreds of messages. Another stacked the judge. How many did you respond to? Silence. 0. Jeffrey said, not one response in 7 years. He placed receipts on the stand. Here are records of gifts your father sent. A $180 scarf, a $320 frame, a $450 bicycle for your son. The judge leaned in, examining them. Did you ever thank your father? Anne whispered, I don't think so. Did you acknowledge receiving them? No. Jeffrey's voice stayed steady. When your father came to meet Connor as a newborn, what happened? It was a bad time. The baby was sleeping. You left him at your door for under 5 minutes. Didn't let him hold his grandson. Anne stared at the table, tears, no longer theatrical. When exactly were you planning to let him meet his grandchildren? She had no answer, just pressed the tissue to her face. No further questions? Anne returned to her seat, shaken, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The judge turned to Alan. Mr. Sullivan, you're next. Alan walked to the witness stand like he owned the courtroom. Confident, controlled his expensive suit, perfectly pressed. He placed his hand on the Bible, took the oath, without a hint of irony. Klein began, Mr. Sullivan, how has your father's abandonment affected you? Alan spoke smoothly. It's been difficult. We tried to include him, but he was never satisfied. At Anne's party, we offered him an investment opportunity to reconcile. He refused and disappeared. Jeffrey rose immediately. Mr. Sullivan, you knew exactly how much money your father had in his bank accounts, didn't you? Alan hesitated. As an attorney, I have access to certain... You investigated your father's finances without permission. That's not an investigation. You knew he had $380,000. You knew the bank. You knew the accounts. How? Silence. You hired a private investigator, didn't you? That's not yes or no. Alan's jaw twitched. Yes. A ripple went through the courtroom. The judge leaned back, taking it in. Jeffrey continued. You tracked your father after he moved 2,800 miles away. You had Mr. Klein call with a fabricated story about a lost bank account. When that failed, you filed this lawsuit, all to access his money. Thus not did your father ever promise to invest. At the party we discussed, did he promise? Alan's voice hardened. He seemed interested. That is not a promise. Jeffrey turned to the judge. No further questions. The judge looked at Claire. No. Any additional witnesses? No, Your Honor, Mr. Pierce. I call Nathan Grant Sullivan. I stood, walked to the witness stand, and placed my hand on the Bible. My legs were steady. My hands didn't shake. Jeffrey's voice softened. Mr. Sullivan, please tell the court what happened. I looked only at the judge. Your Honor, for 7 years, I tried to maintain a relationship with my children. My voice was steady. I called. They didn't answer. I sent messages. They never responded. I sent gifts. They never acknowledged them. I went to their homes. They closed the door in my face. I took a breath. I have 3 grandchildren. Connor, 8. Ava, 6. Zoe, 4. I've never held them. Never heard them call me Grandpa. My voice cracked just once. When my wife, Marilyn, was dying, she made me promise to take care of our babies. I looked at Anne and Alan. I kept that promise. I tried, but they didn't want a father. They wanted money. Anne looked away. Alan turned to stone. Your mother would be ashamed of you. The courtroom went still. Anne trembled. Alan clenched his jaw so tight the muscle jumped. No further questions, Jeffrey said. Klein stood. No questions. I returned to my seat. Now my hands trembled, not from fear, but release. 7 years of weight sliding off. Judge Silverstein removed his glasses, rubbed his nose, and spoke into the silence. I've reviewed all evidence. This is one of the clearest cases I've seen. He looked directly at Anne and Alan. You claimed your father abandoned you. The evidence shows the opposite. For 7 years, he attempted contact calls, ignored messages unanswered, gifts, unacknowledged visits refused. His tone sharpened. There is no law requiring a parent to maintain contact with adult children who choose not to reciprocate. There is certainly no law requiring financial contribution to your investment schemes. He leaned forward. What I find troubling is the pattern of neglect toward your father, followed by sudden interest when you learned he had financial resources. That is not family. That is opportunism. He lifted the gavel. This petition is dismissed in its entirety. I am also issuing a no-contact order. Mr. Sullivan has no obligations to you. Any attempts to contact or harass him will result in contempt charges. The gavel struck sharp final. This case is closed. The echo filled the courtroom, and for the first time in years, I felt not triumph, but peace. Jeffrey touched my shoulder. We can go now. I stood. My legs felt steady, stronger than they had in years. We walked out together. Behind us, Anne and Alan remained at the plaintiff's table, stunned and motionless. In the hallway, Jeffrey said, You did well in there. I just told the truth. Usually, that's enough. He adjusted his briefcase. They might appeal, but they have no grounds. The ruling was clear. Our footsteps echoed across the marble floor. The same floor I'd walked 3 months earlier to file my name change. Same building, different man. Dad, wait, please. Anne's voice behind us. We turned as she hurried toward us. Mascara smudged from real tears this time. Dad, I'm sorry. I know we handled this badly, but we can fix this. We can start over. I looked. Hatter really looked. Not at the little girl she once was, but at the 45-year-old woman standing in front of me. There's nothing to fix. Anne, You made your choice 7 years ago. I made mine 6 months ago. Mine is final. But you're my father. I was your father. I tried. You decided you didn't need one. I turned to leave. Alan stepped forward, blocking the hallway. The courtroom confidence was gone. Anger simmered in its place. You're going to regret this. When you're old and sick and need help, we won't be there. I almost laughed. Alan, you were never there when I needed you. Why would I expect you in the future? I stepped closer. I've arranged for my old age. I have insurance. I have savings. I have my dignity. Another step, which is something you lost a long time ago. I walked past him. He didn't follow. Outside, the late afternoon sun warmed the courthouse steps. Buffalo in autumn, the season I'd once loved before it became a season of being ignored. Cliff paused beside me. Where to now? Homie smiled. Washington's a long way. I know. He extended his hand. It's been an honor, Nathan. I shook it. Thank you for everything. You did the hard part. I just presented the evidence. We stood for a moment, two men who'd fought a battle and won. Then he nodded and walked to his car. I took a taxi to the airport. Flight to Seattle. Connection to Port Angeles. Shuttle to Port Townsend. I got home after midnight. Unlocked my condo. Dropped my bag. Didn't turn on lights. I went straight to the balcony. Poured a glass of wine, a small indulgence. Sat in the dark, watching moonlight stretch across the water. I raised my glass to endings, I said quietly, and to new beginnings. Drank. The first real peace I'd felt in 7 years. Not happiness, not yet. Just the absence of weight, like setting down something so heavy you'd forgotten how it felt to stand upright. Cliff knocked the next morning. One look at my face and he smiled. It went well, then it's over. Good. He lifted a bag, brought muffins. We sat on the balcony, drinking coffee. No need for conversation. Curtis understood presence was enough. The days that followed were quiet. Good quiet. I walked the beach, fixed a shelf at the community center, finished a book on the Pacific Northwest, started planting a small balcony garden for spring. Port Townsend felt more like home than Buffalo ever had. 4 months later, on a grey November afternoon, a package arrived at my door. I recognized Anne's handwriting before I even checked the return address. The package sat on my doorstep when I got back from my morning walk. Small box, brown paper, Connecticut postmark, no name written, but I knew. I brought it inside, set it on the kitchen table, and stared at it for several minutes. Curtis had invited me to coffee earlier. I'd said maybe later. Now I was glad that Cliff was quiet, and opened the package. A letter on top, a small box beneath it, and unfolded the letter. Anne's handwriting elegant, careful, the kind she learned at the private school we could barely afford. Dad, I know you probably won't read this, but I need to try. I've been in therapy since the trial, talking about what I did, what we did. You were right. I was ashamed. Of you, of where we came from. Jeffrey's world was built on old money, and pretending he didn't exist felt easier than explaining I was a factory worker's daughter. I'm sorry for every call. I didn't return every birthday. I ignored every door I closed. I'm sorry I kept your grandchildren from you out of embarrassment. I've started telling Connor and Ava about you. I don't know if it matters now, but I wanted you to know I'm trying. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I understand what I did, and I'm sorry. I read it twice. My hands trembled. Not from fear, but something harder to name. I opened the small box. Inside was an old photograph. Lake George, 25 years ago. I stood in the water with a fishing rod, hair still dark. And at 20, home from college. Alan at 17, awkward but smiling. All of us happy. A life before Marilyn got sick. Before everything fractured. I sat on the couch holding the photo, and for the first time in 7 years, I cried. Not sobbing, just steady tears, silent and unstoppable. I cried for what might have been. For the family in that picture who no longer existed. For Marilyn who would have been devastated. For grandchildren. I'd never hauled for 7 years of trying for the man who'd become invisible. After 10 or 15 minutes, it stopped. Like something inside me had finally emptied. I wiped my face, looked again at the letter, then the photograph. Anne's apology was real, sincere. She finally understood. But some things break in ways that cannot be repaired, not won't. 7 years of silence couldn't be undone by one letter. Lost birthdays, missed Christmases, the ordinary days that made a family, they were gone. I put the letter and photo back in the box, carried it to the bedroom closet, set it beside my olfactory ID and the watch Marilyn gave me on our 10th anniversary. Things I kept, but didn't revisit. I didn't write back, didn't call or text. The apology was heard, acknowledged, but the door stayed closed. Not from anger, just acceptance. Some endings are final. 6 months later, Curtis knocked on my door holding a coffee cake. "Heard it's your birthday," he said. "How did you know it's my birthday?" I asked. Curtis grinned. "You mentioned it once. Figured you'd forget." I stepped aside. "Come in." We sat on the balcony. Coffee cake between us. Crisp October air, sun rising over Puget Sound. The water reflecting pink and gold. 72, Curtis said. "Hell of an age. Better than the alternative," he laughed. He poured coffee from his thermos. We ate cake. Watched a ferry cut across the sound toward the islands. "You doing okay?" Curtis asked. "It's been what, 3 years now?" 3 years next month. It felt like both a lifetime and yesterday. Curtis nodded, not pushing. That was his gift, knowing when silence mattered more than questions. I thought about my life now, morning walks on the beach, coffee with Curtis twice a week, volunteering at the community center, fixing broken chairs and sticking closet doors. New friends, retired fishermen, Navy vets, artists, writers, people who'd become family by choice, not obligation. Wednesday, yogurt classes that helped to my back. Monthly potlucks, holidays spent with people who included me without being asked. A life built on welcome instead of absence. "You ever think about them?" Curtis asked. "Your kid's rare for him to be direct." "Sometimes." I said. "Less now. Hurts less, too." Curtis nodded. "My daughter called last month. First time in 5 years. I looked at him. She apologized. Wanted to reconnect." "What did you say?" "Told her I'd think about it. Haven't called back yet." Silence settled between us. "Some doors are easier to open than others," he said. Yeah, we drank in comfortable quiet. As the sun climbed, Curtis raised his mug to freedom. I lifted mine to dignity. He added 2 men who finally said enough. We drank. After he left, I stayed on the balcony. The sun was full now, bright over the water. I thought about the man I used to be, Grant Sullivan, who'd spent 7 years begging for scraps. Nathan Grant Sullivan didn't beg. I thought about Anne's letter in the closet, about grandchildren I'd never meet. Connor would be 11 now, Ava 9, Zoe 7, growing without knowing me. Just as I'd grown old without knowing them, it made me sad, but not in the crushing way that used to haunt me at 3 a.m. in Buffalo. More like touching an old scar present, but no longer painful. "I don't hate them," I said aloud. "I don't. Maybe I should, but I didn't. I simply released them like letting go of a rope I'd gripped until my hands bled." I stood stretched, felt the familiar but manageable ache in my back. Decided to walk to the bakery for fresh bread, maybe stop at the bookstore. A simple day, a peaceful day. My life, on my terms. I rinsed my mug, grabbed my jacket, and headed out. Paused at the door, looking back at the condo, small, but mine. Ocean view, ocean peace. A place where people knew my name and meant it when they said, "Thank you." I smiled, stepped outside, locked the door, walked down the stairs. We'd fixed last spring. Port Townsend stretched before me. Victorian buildings, art galleries, friendly faces. Life goes on. And for the first time in decades, that filled me with something I thought I'd lost. Joy. Looking back at my true story, I want to share something with anyone listening to these grandpa's stories. Don't make my mistake. I spent 7 years waiting for people who'd already made their choice. 7 years sending gifts into the void. 7 years believing that if I just tried harder, loved more, gave more, they'd finally see me. That's not love. That's self-destruction. Here's what this true story taught me. You cannot force people to value you. Not your children, not anyone. Your dignity isn't negotiable, no matter how much you love them. The hardest lesson, sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is walk away. God gave us free will for a reason. We're allowed to choose ourselves when others choose to abandon us. That's not selfishness. That's survival. If you're in my shoes right now, ignored, used, invisible, please hear this. You deserve better. Your worth isn't determined by who refuses to see it. There are people out there who will value you. Communities that will welcome you. Lives you can build on your own terms. Don't wait 7 years like I did. Don't beg for scraps. Don't sacrifice your peace for people who see you as an ATM. Choose yourself. Choose dignity. Choose freedom. And when you finally do, you might just find what I found at 72 years old, joy. If my true story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below if you've faced similar struggles. These grandpa stories matter because they're real, and none of us should feel alone in this. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button. More stories coming soon. Thank you for listening.